Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I have new polling data to share with you about Donald Trump, and it's not going to surprise you guys to hear the people who know the least about what he's doing and what's going on in government are the ones who support him the most. I mean, we could have guessed, we could have told you that. And if the election was held today, another poll shows Donald Trump losing. Before I get into all these details, though, please do me a big favor. Click the subscribe button below this video. It is free for you. It really helps the show tremendously. So I appreciate it. So here is what's going on with Trump's approval rating. A New York Times Siena poll proves that the more people know about Trump's actions, the less they approve. So, for example, of the poll respondents that knew about the unconstitutional deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man who was sent to an El Salvador prison for the rest of his life for doing nothing wrong whatsoever, only 46% approve of how Donald Trump is handling immigration. Still way too high, right? But at least it's not a majority, unlike the group who didn't know about Garcia's case. So, out of that group, the ones who are completely oblivious to what Donald Trump did with this man, 55% approve of Trump's immigration policies. There was a similar result when respondents were asked about the arrest and the detention of Mahmoud Khalil. Of the people who know about this case and know all the details and how he also has committed no crimes, he just spoke out against the genocide going on in Gaza, only 40% approve of Trump's handling of immigration. Whereas the people who don't know, Trump has a 54% approval on that subject. So, this shows that at least some people still believe in the Constitution. They still have a conscience. And with facts and knowledge comes disapproval of Trump. So that is a good sign. If we can get the message out there, if we can get people more educated on what's going on, it shows there is hope. Again, not a lot, not enough. I would like to see that number drop down into the teens or zero. But anyway, this also carried over to other topics. So, in regard to Trump's handling of the economy, Trump scored a 41% approval rating with the respondents who were aware of the chaos going on in the stock market. But among the poll respondents who just weren't paying attention and had no idea about the stock market volatility, 55% approved of Trump's handling of the economy. The pollsters also found that low information voters all had one thing in common. Not all, I should say, most. They were more likely than the others to get their media or to get their news from social media. So clearly, they're in their own little right-wing bubbles. They don't venture outside of those bubbles to even try to avail themselves of alternate perspectives, of alternate facts, of, additional facts, I should say. I don't want to sound like Kellyanne Conjob over here, but additional facts. Again, not surprising, still frustrating, though. Another poll conducted at the beginning of this month of May, it shows Donald Trump losing to Kamala Harris by 5 points. So this survey comes from a company called Verisight. They were commissioned to do this survey by a group called Strength in Numbers. So first, they asked respondents if they approve or disapprove of the way Donald Trump's handling his job as president. 56%, 56%, I should say, said that they either somewhat or strongly disapprove. Only 40% strongly or somewhat approve. So, you already have a group of people who are not in favor of what Trump's doing by and large. When asked about specific issues, Trump is underwater in this poll on every single issue with the exception of border security. So for those on the podcast, I'm going to run through some of these real quick. So on prices and inflation, 31% approve, 63% disapprove. On trade with other countries, 36% approve, 57% disapprove. In regard to jobs and the economy, only 38% approve, 55% disapprove. Regarding deportations, 44% approve, 50% disapprove. And he's even slightly upside down on immigration. So 47% approve, 49% disapprove. So they're seeing those things separately. Deportation, they're seeing separate from immigration. So typically, people are like, oh, I like that he's securing the border. I don't like how he's going about these deportations. And as with the Times Siena poll, when respondents were given more information about specific cases, the approval fell. So, for example, they asked the respondents if they agree with deporting all immigrants to their home country if the immigrant entered the U.S. illegally. So just blanket, like if someone comes into the U.S., they, cross the border illegally, are you in favor of that, of deporting them to their home country? 44% said yes. So not a majority, but still a plurality. 38% said no. When they explained to these people the case of Kilmar Obrega Garcia, and they explained all the nuances and how he had an order saying he wasn't supposed to be deported, that he was allowed to stay here, or that I shouldn't say that, but that he was not to be deported to El Salvador in particular, where he was from, because of the risk on his life. And the fact that the Trump administration just threw him in this hellhole without any kind of due process. When they're given that nuance, these respondents basically flip-flopped. So only 39% said, yeah, I still approve of these blanket deportations. 43% said, no, I disagree. We should not be doing this. When asked about the economy, a majority of respondents, 53%, said the U.S. economy is worse now than it was a year ago. And 56% said Trump's policies specifically have made the economy worse. Only 25% said, yeah, I think the economy is improved. And 22% said they think that Trump's decisions have made things better. These are the hardcore Kool-Aid drinkers. Like, these are the 40-ounce, not even a 6-pack, a 12-pack a day of the Kool-Aid. And then Verisight also asked, if the 2026 general election for Congress was held today, which party's candidate would you be more likely to vote for? 47% said that they would vote for Democrats or the Democratic candidate. 41% said that they would go for the Republican candidate. And Democrats were favored to handle almost all issues better than Republicans, with the exception of deportations, immigration, and border security. So on the economy, on everything, social services, on healthcare, you name it, they score higher than the Republicans. So the only thing that Republicans have over them in this poll is issues of immigration and the border. So Verisight also posed a hypothetical do-over of the 2024 election. Kamala Harris beats Trump in this hypothetical do-over 40% to 36% for Trump. And check this out. Harris' lead is even greater among respondents who did not vote in 2024. So when they broke it down by group in this hypothetical rematch, Harris picks up more voters than Trump in every single category. And she retains more of her 2024 voters than Trump does. So, of these respondents who voted for Trump in 2024, only 86% said, yeah, I would still do that again. I would still cast my ballot for Trump. 92% of Harris voters said, I would still vote for her today. Among the people who said that they voted third party in 2024, only 5% said that they would now vote for Trump. 19% said, no, I would vote for Harris if I had it to do over again. So clearly, a lot of voters wish that they had done things differently in November, and they are not liking what they see from Trump. So, while there's so many people out there, there's not that much erosion in Trump's base. And, if the election was held today, it wouldn't really make any difference. Things wouldn't. No, it has nothing, not nothing to do, but very little to do with his voters and how they're feeling. I mean, there is erosion, as we're clearly seeing in every poll. There is erosion there. And I've been doing all the Trump regret videos, as you guys know. But it also has to do with the non-voters and the third-party voters. They would swing the election back to the Democrats at this point. And I don't even think it has anything to do with Kamala Harris. I think it's just give me, any Democrat, vote blue no matter who, because this is a freaking nightmare. So that's what I think we're seeing. And two groups that have become the most disillusioned with Trump, I've mentioned this before, are Latino voters and Gen Z voters, so people 30 and under. Here's what the managing editor of the Cook Political Report had to say. This was earlier this month. She was on MSNBC, and here's what she had to tell them about, I think it was 21 different polls that they aggregated and reviewed about this issue. So take a look.
What we've seen is over the last 3 weeks or so, the president's approval rating, as you said, dropped a net of about 7 percentage points. This poll tracker is aggregating from 21 different polls. When we saw this big drop from Latinos, I think that's really important. But the biggest drop was from younger voters. And independents also. Biggest drop, one of the biggest drops in those subgroups. Those are the three groups. If you look back at 2020 and 2024, that's the groups that Donald Trump got the biggest bump in between his 2020 and his 2024 election. That means that it's pretty rough news for Republicans if they want to rebuild that coalition in 2026.
So they're not happy with Trump, obviously, based on this aggregation of these polls. And then another pollster found similar results. So this one was done by Equus Research. I think that's how you pronounce it. They polled more than 2,500 Hispanic voters between April 16th and May 5th. And they found that Trump's approval rating is eroding among these groups. So especially with Latino men between 18 and 24 years old. Out of the more than 2,500 respondents, 44% said that they voted last year for Trump. 53% of them said they voted for Harris, but then only 38% of them said that they approve of the job that Trump is doing. 60% disapprove. So clearly, some of his voters, if 44% voted for him, but only 38% approve of his job or the job he's doing, clearly that is, some of his voters. So overall, he has lost 6% of his Latino voters, according to this specific Equus poll. If you look at young Latino voters who voted for Trump in 2024, they've swung even harder against Trump. So he won that group, voters under the age of 30, by 11% over Kamala Harris. He is now underwater by 11% with that same group. So a 22% shift away from Trump. And his approval rating is just abysmal in regard to specific issues. So on the economy, only 36% of these people, of Latino voters, approve, 62% disapprove. On the topic of immigration, 66% said that Trump is, quote, going too far and targeting the types of immigrants who strengthen our nation. So that was how they posed it in this poll. And again, 66% said, yeah, he's going way overboard. So again, these were a lot of Latino voters who handed him the election. And by, their own account, Equus, I mean, that included that 66% included 36% of the Latino voters who voted for Trump in 2024. So he's losing support. I don't care what the right wing says. They can try to spin it. They can do all the cope that they want, take all the copium that they need to deal with this. But the fact remains, Trump is screwing up. So this is a good thing. This is a very good thing that we're seeing erosion. And again, for people who say, oh, who cares about polls? Who cares about polls are Republican lawmakers who are tracking this stuff and deciding whether or not they're going to continue to toe the party line or if they're going to start standing up against Trump. And guess what? We're seeing that. I have a report that I'm going to share with you guys about 3 Latino Congress members specifically who are now starting to speak out against some of Trump's policies, one in particular. So this does make a difference. Because the only reason they're speaking out is because I guarantee they are hearing from their constituents and they are seeing the polling and it's affecting their personal polling. So they're not about to lose their job over Trump. That's not what they want to do. So it makes a difference there. It makes a difference in how the Supreme Court adjudicates these cases on immigration. It makes a difference on how people in the media react. If they feel like Trump has the wind behind his, on his back and he is just soaring to new heights and he has the majority of the country on his side, they're unwilling to speak out. They're unwilling to fight him when he files these lawsuits. Same thing with these law firms that he's trying to sue or that he's barring from, any kind of work with the federal government. It affects everything. So for people who think that, oh, he's already in office, who cares? He's got all the power, polls don't matter. They damn well do. They do in many, many ways. So anyway, guys, I will let you know when I hear more. As you know, there's been polling coming out nonstop. So I'm sure I'll even have maybe even more for you this week or definitely by next week. All right. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share and subscribe. Please donate if you can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.